types of zina do we expose ourselves to on a daily basis? How many different types? You know, zina is not a small sin. It's such a sin, never mind commit it. Allah says, La taqrabu zina, don't even go near it. But okay, it's such a sin that the Prophet ﷺ in one hadith has mentioned, Man zana aw shariba al-khamr, naza Allahu minhu al-iman. كما يخلو الإنسان القميص من رأسه. Whoever commits zina or takes intoxicants, weed, whatever it may be, Allah takes out his iman just like one of you takes off his qamis above his head. Prophet ﷺ in another hadith mentioned the different types of zina. Zina of the eyes, he mentioned looking at what you shouldn't be looking at. Zina of the ears, listening to what you shouldn't be listening to. Zina of the tongue, speaking to those that you shouldn't be speaking to. Zina of the hands, touching what you shouldn't be touching. Zina of the feet, walking towards what you shouldn't be walking towards. You know, bearing this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, how many different types of zina? One that goes online, how many different types of zina does he expose himself to on a daily basis? And you know what the sad thing is? The sad thing is, because everyone's doing it, it makes it right. The thought doesn't even cross our mind. Al-baliyatu idha ammat khaffat. That's the sad thing. The thought doesn't even cross our mind that what we're doing is wrong. You know, when a person doesn't even regard a sin as a sin, where will he ever receive the tawfiq of repenting and turning to Allah and making tawbah? We expose ourselves to the zina of the ears, listening to things that we shouldn't be listening to. We expose ourselves to the zina of a tongue, speaking to those that we shouldn't speaking to. How many times a day we're committing this sin? وَالْقَلْبُ تَتَمَنَّى وَتَشْتَهِي, the heart desires. The zina of the eyes, looking at what you shouldn't be looking at. What am I referring to? People's profiles, obscene pictures. I'm referring to watching filth. And you know this last one, you know what I'm referring to, don't you guys? Watching filth. Yeah. You know this last one, who's not I? Illa man asima rabbuk, illa man sha'Allah, those Allah's protected. But now, you know, in this day and age, the small, the big, the young, the old, the male, the female, to some degree, everyone's at it, except those that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has protected. Can you imagine if Allah exposes you on the day of judgment? You know, if one of you were caught, let's say I were to catch a particular individual, and he knew that I knew, and I said to him, you know what, I'm going to tell your mother and father. How would you feel? Yeah, tell anyone, but don't tell my mother and father. And you know what? You'll do anything to make sure that I don't tell your mother and father. Why? Because you know deep down that, you know what? It's below the belt. There's nothing more shameful than that. And you know you'll never ever be able to look at your mother and father in the eye if they ever came to know this is what my son watches and this is what my son spends time doing. My young friend, if this is how you feel in the dunya and you fear this humiliation and shame, if your mother and father were to know about it, then what will you do on the day of judgment? How will you face your Allah? How will you face your Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? My young friend, you know, on that day Allah is going to humiliate people. Allah, that is the day where Allah will take revenge and punish and reward. Many people will be raised in a particular manner because Allah is going to humiliate them on that day. Can you imagine that portion of your life when you were doing that, is played in front of the whole of mankind? 124,000 prophets, your mother's there, your father's there, your relatives there, the whole of mankind is there, and Allah humiliates you on the plane of resurrection. How will you feel? How will you feel? While I'm on the subject, there's so many youngsters here. Those that watch this filth, once they watch this filth, what do? You're going to have to release. If you couldn't control your desire and you watch this filth, after watching it, do you think you'll be able to control yourself? No way on God's earth. Again, إِلَّا مَنْ أَصِمَ رَبُّكَ, except those Allah protects. How are you going to release? Let me tell you. Either you're going to commit zina, okay? You're going to either commit zina, or you're going to either take advantage of those that are vulnerable within society. And I'm talking about children. All these pedophiles, where do you think it begins from? They watch this filth, and as a result of which they become blind up here. Do you understand? And then they start doing things which I can't even, bring to my tongue. Oh, you don't do this, what will you do? You'll marry your hand. All these things are not permissible. But okay, with regards to the last, we live at times in an environment where they encourage this. And they say, it's good for a person to get to know his body and explore. Astaghfirullah. Yeah. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned in a hadith 7 people which Allah has cursed and which Allah will not look at with mercy on the day of judgment. And one of them is Nakihul Yad, the one that marries his hand. But in a weak narration, it's mentioned that some people will be resurrected on the day of judgment in such a condition that their hands will be pregnant. Their hands will be pregnant. Why? Whilst they were in the dunya, they used to play with their organs. Can you imagine being resurrected on the day of judgment? Yeah. Where your hand is pregnant. Can you imagine the humiliation? Whilst I'm on the subject, my young friends, there is no benefit in terms of the akhirah, and there is no benefit in terms of the dunya. Let me share with you some of the harms in terms of the dunya, as hopefully it will prove beneficial. And I'm sharing with you information that I've accumulated and received over the years, after having spoken to many youngsters like you. This disease can lead to what? You know what? Premature ejaculation. This disease can lead to premature ejaculation. Can you imagine the humiliation? Let me put a scenario to you. You've got married, you're coming to your wife. Okay? Newly married, you're coming to your wife. You abused yourself as a child while you were growing up. You did what I've just mentioned. Yeah? And that was your pastime. You're coming to your wife and you realize, you know what? You can't even satisfy her need because you dropped the wicket in advance. How will you look at your wife in the eye? Okay, you know what? Firstly, you'll get away with it. Firstly, you'll get away with it. A week down the line, you wanted to fulfill your need. You came again. And you know what? You leaked again without satisfying her need. A week down the line, and again she'll overlook it. You know what? She'll overlook it once, she'll overlook it twice, she'll overlook it 3 times. At the end of the day, she's a human being. She's a human being, and she also has needs. Okay? What do you think she'll do? Wait for you for wait for you for another 5 years till you get it right, and you've sorted out the problem. No, my young friend. Let me tell you what's happening and what has happened in cases that I've dealt with. Yeah? She'll pack her bags and she will go. She'll want out of the marriage. She'll come to her mother and father and say, you know what? He's not for me. So her mother and father will naturally ask, okay, why? What's wrong with this guy? He's really good. He speaks really well. MashaAllah, he's really good with us. He treats you well. Why do you want to break the marriage? She's going to have to tell him something. And that's when she'll tell. That fine, he's good in all these departments, but he's not a man. Your mother and father will also find out, because they want to know why the marriage is broken up. How will you show your face to your mother and father and society once they find out that you're not a man? Believe me, my young friend, there is no bigger humiliation for a man more than that. That you know what? After that you'll always live on the edge and on fear. Yeah. In society and in gatherings, you will not be able to speak. Because you'll always fear that, you know what, somebody might just mention it and somebody might just shut you up. You'll not be in a position to talk, because the day you open your mouth, he'll turn around and say to you, you're talking to me, you're not even a man, go look after yourself. This is reality. You're not going to be able to go to the doctor either. And again, I'm telling you from experience, from youngsters that have come to me. When I've told them to go to the doctor, he'll say, no, you know what, Ustadi, I can't go to the doctor. What if it leaks out? What if people come to know, okay, I'm suffering from this? You're going to have to live with that. That's the first harm. The second harm, you're not going to last long. Again, there's so many young kids, that's why I'm using, indirect words, and they're appropriate. We're in the house of Allah. You're not going to last long. 45, 50, you're tuss. A balloon when it has no air, you're going to be like that. Yeah. Why? Because you abused yourself as you were growing up. You abused the blessing that Allah gave you. Anything, if you abuse it and you don't use it in the manner that it should be used, what happens? That thing doesn't last long. You've got a beautiful car. It takes diesel. You put petrol in it. What's going to happen? It ain't going to work. It ain't going to last long. You've got a blender. The instructions tell you don't crush ice. You started crushing ice. How long is that blender going to work? Likewise, my young friends, if you don't follow Allah's instruction with regards to the tool and blessing that Allah gave you, then my young friend, come 45, 50, you'll be finished. But your wife won't. Do you understand? Again, she'll have needs. What will happen? How long is she going to make sabr? Only a few weeks ago, a 60-year-old woman came to me complaining about the same thing. Her husband's got diabetes, bichara, not through this, diabetes and zina about it. He's weak. In that department, he's very weak. But she can't make sabr. To such an extent that she said to her husband, find me another man and then divorce me. Find me another man and then divorce me. Come do that much good with me. So what will happen? She's going to pack her bags. And then when she packs her bags, she's going to tell the world, the reason I pack my bags, because he hasn't got the bottle anymore. Can you imagine the humiliation? Another harm for our youngsters is, marriage is a great disappointment. Marriage becomes a great disappointment. I like it. Marriage is a great blessing of Allah. But marriage becomes a great disappointment. You know why it becomes a great disappointment? Because Zahir Bathir, all his, teenage years, he's been watching filth. So when he gets married, he's expecting fireworks. He's expecting exactly the same filth that he's been watching. So I get many youngsters come up to me and say, you know what, Sheikh, we're not happy yet. I'm not happy at home. And he start complaining about his wife that, she's just passive. There's no dynamite. Nothing exciting happens. I want to get rid, I want to move on. So then I start talking to them and start asking them, okay, what you're referring to. And you know what? When you get to the bottom of it, you find out that he's been watching filth. He's been watching filth, and that's what he's expecting at home. And then you've got to explain. Then I explain to him like this. I say, you know what? Do you watch these action movies? He says, yeah, of course I do. I say, Arnold Schwarzenegger, when he jumps off that building, a skyscraper, and he just gets up again as if nothing's happened. Or, what do you call it? They're bombing him and they're shooting hundreds of bullets, and he's dodging every single one of them. I says, do you believe in that? He says, shit, you'd be stupid, yara. That's just entertainment. That's not real. That's just entertainment. He gets the message because I say, you know what you've been watching wasn't real. If that's a multi-billion-dollar industry, then this is also a multi-billion-dollar industry. And then I say to him, you know what? Go home and do shukr. I said, go home and do shukr. I said, if that's how you found your woman or your wife to be, go home and prostrate before Allah and thank Him for His blessings. He said, what are you on about? I said, have you ever driven a car? He says, yeah. I said, the first time you drove the car, did you, what do you call it, stole the engine? I said, yeah. How many times? I said, many times. I said, did you make a mess up of your first lesson? He says, yeah. I said, afterwards, did it get better? He says, yeah. I said, you know what? Thank Allah for this blessing that Allah has given you. Yeah. Because I assure you, if there was dynamite at home, this wife of yours has been taking lessons from elsewhere. And then he gets it. And the biggest harm of this is, it rips you of your modesty. It takes away your haya. You have nothing left. I mean, I'll give you an example on this note. I'm going to conclude 7:39. And you see this. You will see a muhajjaba, a woman wearing scarf. Yeah. Beautifully dressed. Only her face is exposed. And she'll take a picture and she'll put it on her Facebook page. Somebody will comment, oh, you look so beautiful. How beautiful you would look if your hair were exposed. Yeah. Egging her on. Yeah. What she'll do next time around, she'll take off her scarf. And she'll show her beautiful hair. Time passes by. Now she's taken off her jubba, her abaya. And she'll put on her pic. She's getting more and more likes and encouragement. What she'll start doing now is, her dresses will become shorter and tighter. Time passes by, she'll not exposing her arms. There'll be no sleeves on her dresses. Time passes by, it's gone to a t-shirt. Time passes by. Again, my young friends, this is not an exaggeration. From fully covered head to toe, only face exposed, it gets to a stage where they're sexting. It's all come off. The sad thing is, not even for a dime. Not that I'm saying sell yourself for dimes. You get it, don't you guys? The woman on the street sells her soul, she might get $10 in return. And this God-fearing woman that started God-fearing, stooped so low, I'm talking about males as well, stooped so low that she sells her izzat and her dignity, not even for a dime. Halanki al-haya'u shu'batun min al-iman. Look how, this attribute is what differentiates between humans and animals. Animals have no, regard for right or wrong. They just follow their desires. Humans have a haya imani, and this is haya that encourages them to do good and it protects them from all evil. So guys, I'm going to sum it up and wrap it up. Like I said, these tools are here to stay. Yeah. And as time passes, Allah knows best what will come out tomorrow. Yeah. But it's important. It's important. Every person knows themselves. If you're from amongst those that's weak, that has no control, then I advise that you refrain from them to the best of your ability. Or come do them in the presence of your mother and father or the elders, that even when you're affected by the shaitan, he can't get the better of you. Use them, but limit them. Take guidance from them. Keep a good ta'alluq with your scholars so that you get the imani ghiza, nourishment on a daily basis, which helps in turn to protect you from these fitnas. Allah give me tawfiq. Allah give me